There's a hidden ingredient to success that almost nobody talks about, but which, if you develop it, will allow you to achieve what 99% of people never will. And that ingredient is a clear, rational mind. The real key to achieving your most ambitious goals. Over more than a decade as a peer-reviewed researcher in the behavioral sciences, as well as a successful entrepreneur, I've discovered 5 science-based books that will help you get there. And the first book on this list is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, which will help you gain tremendous influence with people. Voss is both an entrepreneur and a former FBI hostage negotiator, and he brings a ton of valuable experience with him into this book to help us all level up our communication skills and become more influential with people around us. I first started out reading this book back when I was running an academic test prep agency in New York City. This business was extremely profitable, with 5 figures of monthly profit being a regular thing. But at the same time, there was so much hassle to deal with on the people side of the business: selling, hiring, training, customer service, and so on. And this people side of the business is where this book really helped me, and where it can help you too, no matter what kinds of goals you're pursuing. Central to this book is Voss's idea that in every situation, the people we're communicating with simply need to feel 1, a sense of trust, and 2, a sense of security and control. And I mean, think about it. Isn't that true for you too? Think about a time in your life when you or the people you were communicating with lost those feelings of trust, security, and control. That's when they shut down completely and communication failed, right? Well, first, let's take a look at how to accomplish mutual trust and how that helps you gain influence with others. To achieve mutual trust, Voss claims that we should never compromise when we're in conversation with others. But that sounds kind of counterintuitive, right? Well, by never compromise, he means we should never put ourselves in a situation with someone else while negotiating that only meets them halfway for the sake of it. Doing this, he points out, simply reduces mutual trust and forces both parties to come to a solution that both are unhappy with. And let's be honest, when was a time you simply compromised because you felt you should, only to have the result end up worse for everyone? Did that improve trust, or did it destroy it? Well, instead, our main goal should be to create a win-win situation for everyone. And this principle helps me directly, for instance, with sales situations. I remember several times when clients would walk in and inquire about our services, I would do sales consultations with them and assess their child's needs and expectations, and many times their expectations were unrealistic. For example, sometimes they wanted a guarantee that their kid would get into an Ivy League school, or they wanted to structure the lessons in the way they thought was best. Up until then, I might compromise here and there to try to at least partially satisfy their demands, but this usually ended up badly. Instead, I found it was often better to simply be very direct with them about why their expectations were unrealistic, why my approach would work best, and how if they didn't agree to these terms, it was honestly in their best interest to simply walk out the door. In essence, I was practicing this win-win principle because whether they walked out the door or not, the result would be both of us doing what was in our mutual interest. Have you ever handled a situation this way? Well, in return, that honesty actually made me seem more trustworthy in the client's eyes, and in many cases, it actually increased my perceived value and influence with them, which resulted in many of them actually coming back to do business with me. And think about it. How could using this win-win approach help you right now in your career, relationships, or business? Well, now let's look at Voss's second point here on how to help the person we're speaking with feel a greater sense of security and control. As we'll see, when we combine these strategies together in conversation, we become practically magnetic to other people, making them more open to helping us get what we want. There are 2 other specific techniques to achieve this Voss teaches in his book that helped me specifically in my direct sales business. The first one is to validate people's feelings, and the second one is to take the focus off of ourselves. When I was working with my team, I was such a bad communicator and so socially awkward that I sometimes would unknowingly piss my team members off or discourage them, and this had direct consequences for sales production. But when I started to use the first of these 2 techniques, everything changed. Voss recommends that when you make a mistake or do something to anger or upset someone, it's very productive to acknowledge their feelings by stating, "I really messed up. You probably think I'm a jerk." And that's exactly what I did. Almost immediately, it disarmed my team members and made them feel heard and in control. And when people feel heard and in control, they become much more receptive to hear what you have to say. The second second of these techniques, taking the focus off of myself, still helps me on a regular basis today. When I was in the academic world, I learned to say the words I think or I believe a lot. I think this is wrong and that's right. I believe this is better than that. And that style of communication tends to be really polarizing because, to put it bluntly, nobody gives a about what you think. All they care about is what they themselves think. And so Voss recommends shifting your language just a bit. Instead of saying, I think this is wrong and this is right, or I believe this is better than that, simply change the words I think or I believe to it seems, and then follow it with a neutral question that acknowledges that you might be wrong. So for example, we would change a sentence such as, I think not everyone is fulfilling their responsibilities to, it seems not everyone is fulfilling their responsibilities. Is that right or am I totally off? Ask yourself, how would using some of these techniques transform both your professional and personal relationships? Well, just remember, strong communication relies on creating a shared sense of security. And while knowing how to work with and influence others is key, there's another skill set that I've developed that enabled me years ago to go from earning minimum wage to now earning more in 1 hour than many people earn in 1 day. And that's by using the power of rational thinking. To understand this, let's take a look at our next book on this list, Being Logical, A Guide to Good Thinking by D.Q. McInerney. Listen, we all have biased thinking. It doesn't matter who we are, what our politics or religion is, or where we were born. The fact is that our flawed human brain starts with an emotion or feeling in our limbic system and then travels up to our prefrontal cortex to come up with the logic to justify it, not the other way around. And the very fact that you're not aware of this and in control of this process is probably leading you to make many bad decisions in your life right now. When logical and rational thinking is applied to making money, it's called knowledge work. And this type of work is the highest earning type of work, full stop. So don't underestimate the power of this book. In this book, McInerney teaches us the laws of logic and the laws of thinking and helps give us concrete tools to spot not only our own bad thinking, but the bad thinking of others. And don't you think this is also a key component to being able to influence others? Being logical isn't just an academic exercise, it's how you become an independent person. This book has been a crucial go-to for me to review on a fairly regular basis because yes, you could read a finance book to improve your finances, a relationship book to improve your relationships, or a business book to help you build a business. But the power of a rational mind goes deeper than all of these. By learning the laws of logic and reason along with the helpful examples McInerney gives in this book, we become better at making all sorts of decisions and can avoid being manipulated by others. And that takes us to the next book on our list, What's Up with Assholes by Dr. Jeremy Sherman, which will help you thrive against even the most impossible people. So consider this. You will come across and have probably already come across people in your life who simply don't care about reasoning with you, who want to dominate the conversation, and who see every interaction as a kind of power struggle. Sounding familiar yet? These people are what Sherman calls a-holes. And the fact is, these people will always be around you in some way, especially if you want to do anything incredible with your life, such as building a business and becoming financially free, working on political or social projects that help people, or doing pretty much anything else worthwhile. And Sherman is spot on here to argue that traditional communication methods such as listening to others' emotions and finding their needs or reasoning with them using logic simply don't apply to a-holes. And if we really want to get anything done and rise to the top in our lives, we need to know and be prepared for how to deal with them. Now, in the first place, we need to be very careful to know for sure that we are in fact dealing with an a-hole and not simply someone who is difficult or who disagrees with us. Sherman goes into great detail in this book on how to spot a genuine one, so you can simply read the book to get a good sense of how to do so. Instead, I'll share here 2 of the strategies Sherman recommends using to both defend ourselves from a-holes and completely diffuse their power. And these are 1, delegitimize them, and 2, make their behavior cost them something. Let's look at the first one. When in conversation with a-holes, never pay attention to the content of what they're saying. It's usually meaningless noise. In fact, if you take a logical approach to arguing against them, it often simply validates their position. For an extreme and obvious example, if you're talking to a Nazi, actually taking the time to logically argue against their position signals to them and others that it's a position worth arguing against in the first place, when in reality, even a 5-year-old can tell the difference between right and wrong. And that leads us to number 2 here. Make their behavior cost them something. When dealing with a-holes, there's more of a benefit to exposing their true nature to others and putting them into a position of shame or even some sort of material loss. This is often the only way you can protect yourself and others from their influence. But remember to be very careful with this. Most people are good people. Most people will engage in difficult conversations with you respectfully if you give them a chance and show compassion. So you don't want to use this recklessly, only selectively. Otherwise, you're the a-hole. The next book on this list is Buddha's Brain: The Practical Neuroscience of Happiness, Love, and Wisdom by Dr. Rick Hanson. Okay, so far we've explored many tools for achieving what most people never will. From communicating in good faith, to find win-win solutions, to developing our ability for logical and analytical thinking, to gaining influence over the most difficult people. But now it's time to understand how to actually harness the power of our brain to help us achieve total self-mastery. And that's exactly what this book teaches us. One aspect of this book I really appreciate is that unlike the vast majority of self-help books, this book actually contains citations and lists of clinical research for pretty much every claim the authors make. And that's pretty useful because most self-help authors are just pulling stuff out of their, well, as the authors explain, our brains have evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to respond to our environment, others, and our own thoughts in very specific ways. For instance, have you ever tensed up or felt that pit in your stomach when someone insults you? Well, that's the activation of your autonomic nervous system, and for thousands of years it has protected us from threats such as hungry lions, whereas nowadays it mostly makes us rage post on random Reddit threads or start an argument with family members during holiday gatherings. On the flip side, have you ever felt that rush after committing a random act of kindness or helping cheer up a friend? Well, that's your hypothalamus releasing oxytocin and vasopressin, and your reward system releasing dopamine. And as the authors point out, the more we understand the internal workings of our brain when we're angry, calm, focused, unfocused, motivated, or unmotivated, the more we can literally reshape our brain to behave how we want it to behave. We literally do have that kind of control. We simply have to train it. This book is perfect for you even if you have no background in neuroscience, so give it a read. By the way, if you're loving these book recommendations and want to 10x your reading efficiency this year, then check out Shortform. It's my go-to for book and article summaries and comprehensive book analyses, and you can score a free trial plus 20% off your annual subscription by clicking the link in the pinned comment below. And that takes us to the last book on our list, The War of Art by Steven Pressfield, which will arm you with the courage and strength needed to overcome your greatest obstacles to success. Okay, so you want to be an entrepreneur. You want to get the next promotion in your company, or you want to be the next influential person everyone in your field looks up to. All right, but do you really know what it takes? Throughout all my experience in business over the past 11 years now, I've come to understand why only about 5% or less of people truly make it. And it's not so much about the resources we have. For sure, there are some people who were born with a silver spoon in their mouths and who had their daddies give them millions of dollars to start their business, but let's ignore those people. Aside from those cases, when people succeed at something, anything, it's because, as Pressfield explains, their work has become a part of who they are. And they can therefore consistently overcome what he calls resistance. And if you've ever lacked motivation to do something you know you need to do, or faced obstacles or setbacks despite working freakishly hard, then you've experienced this. Contrast that attitude to all the Bitcoin bros who try to sell you on making 100K per week in 5 weeks, or all the people who think they're gonna get rich on the next fad without bringing any value at all to the marketplace. When they come up against obstacles, these tough bros end up revealing themselves as nothing more than little crybabies who can't handle a little failure. But don't get me wrong, this isn't just a business book. This applies to anyone pursuing academic goals, political or social goals, artistic goals, or the formation of new habits or any other personal growth goals. This book really helped me have a heart-to-heart with myself about whether my heart was truly in the work I was doing. And it'll not only do the same for you, but it'll also make clear for you the path forward. My only warning to you is that this book will probably make you cry like it did for me. And let's face it, real men cry. Because Pressfield is a master at writing in such a way so as to make you come face to face with yourself in the most intimate way possible. With all this said, which of these 5 books will you be starting with, and what are some of your goals for this year? I'd love to hear about it in the comments. If you want to keep leveling up your critical thinking to make a massive impact, not only in your own life, but also in the lives of countless others, then be sure to watch this next video.